welcome to the sidelines of Pondy Litfest 2024. I have Shiv Aroor with me once more. Shiv, this time I don't want to talk to you about your journalism, but rather your expertise, and that is matters of security, and relate to us the internal security threats and the external. But before that, there are some countries that I would like to understand better, the relationship vis-à-vis India, and the first one is Russia. So, with the Ukraine war, and I'm speaking from a commoner, so you must understand where the questions are coming from. So, with the Ukraine war, what we as observers are seeing is that Russia is getting close to China. So, what does that mean for India?
Well, Russia is not getting close to China. Russia has been close to China for a very long time. India has been close to Russia for a very long time as well. So, it's not a, it's usually quite tempting for for observers to simplify these strands and relationships between countries, but diplomacy is a far more complicated issue. I'm not trying to say that it's difficult to understand. It's not, because after all, these pulls and pressures are driven by human to human contact between leaders, and we have a fascinating pantheon of leaders currently leading these countries. You have Putin, you have Xi, you've got Modi, you've got Biden receding into the sunset, and it's actually a really fascinating time to sort of look at what is essentially a story in motion, because post-pandemic, post the beginning of the Ukraine war, and especially with what's happening in the Middle East now, the dynamics of all of these relationships are shifting. India and China currently in a frozen military standoff that's been going on for 4 years and running now. India and the United States are that is India's fastest growing relationship if you look at in terms of the rate of achievements between the two countries. Despite the small little niggles here and there. But India and Russia is like this old vintage cupboard in an old Haveli. It's there, it's dependable, it's always been relied upon. Even in times of torment and turmoil and turbulence, Russia has always stood by India, and what people always forget to say as a suffix, India has always stood by Russia. There is no question of should India be worried that Russia and China are getting close? No, it's a reality. I mean, there's no question of worry, because India's strength is very unique in this dynamic, because unlike China, which brings to the table a very different kind of power, India brings to the table, in the context of Russia, Ukraine. Let's just take the Russia-Ukraine example, for instance. India is in an incredibly unique position. It has been derided, it's been criticized for saying, no, you should take a stand. Oh God, you're going and meeting Russia, then you're going to meet Ukraine. I find these things actually the best of Indian diplomacy. They are actually an affirmation of I hate the word non-aligned, because nobody is non-aligned. But the fruits of many decades of diplomatic experimentation, through Nehru, through Indira Gandhi, through all the governments, has yielded amazing fruit today. It's put India in a position where it is equally respected, equally embraced, metaphorically and physically, by two men and two countries that wish destruction upon each other. It's the reason why both Putin and Zelensky look at India and actually unequivocally ask that India put itself in a position where it can be an interlocutor or some kind of a peacemaker. So China can never be that. China's relationship with countries is largely transactional. It's largely aimed at being unipolar, as General Narasimhan said at the PLF session, and therefore there is always a trust deficit. Even Russia has a trust deficit as far as China is concerned, because Russia is aware that China has harnessed and harvested much of its security related strength at the cost of Russia, materially and otherwise. And therefore, that kind of relationship it can never have with any other country. So India is most definitely competing. The fact that India is being looked at in the same diplomatic frame relationship wise as China is, for me, it's an affirmation of India's rise and the success of Indian diplomacy.
So I'll come back to the India rise statement in the context of what America allegedly managed to do in Bangladesh. So you can throw your light on that. But before that, there is again, from the perspective of someone who who has seen history, who has seen the two wars, who has understood why NATO came about after the end of the Second World War. But then the Soviet Union collapsed. Explain NATO expansion.
Well, look. Ultimately, NATO had to expand because
what is its mandate?
No, so the NATO is a security alliance. It's a military alliance. It's an alliance of patrolling. It's an alliance of deterrence. It's an alliance of air defense. That's what it is. It's not a talk shop. It's a very execution and deployment specific kind of alliance between all these countries, and there was no question that it would have to expand and induct or admit more countries because the essential part of the Cold War may be over. When we say Cold War, we think of what happened in the 60s and 70s, but even post the collapse of the Soviet Union and in the 90s and 2000s, a very different kind of Cold War has always prevailed. I've always actually asked this question: when did the Cold War's never ended? It's not really ended in that sense. The impulse towards creating spheres of influence, the spread of communism in that sense, that has given way to a new kind of bipolar hegemony by Russia and the United States. But now there's of course also the rise of China, and to a admittedly much smaller extent India. So Europe we can come to separately. So in my view, the fact that Russia, which had sort of shaken off the uncertainties and turbulences of the collapse of the Union, had acquired a very aggressive new form in the new world, and that had made NATO nervous. And in order to, NATO is about geography, NATO is about containment, NATO is about a string of pearls around the big bad bear, to contain it. What's happening in Ukraine right now? Ukraine wants to join NATO. It's about territory. It's about.
Yeah, I understand that, but you see, after 1991 until Putin came, Russia was almost insignificant in terms of its capacity and in terms of its energy levels. It had to do a turnaround. So you did not see the expansion then.
But that's because the Union.
So you didn't
just
expect
collapsed.
Russia to do the turnaround. Like you had a decade. They had a very dark period where they were very weak.
It took a while, and in many ways, it still isn't over yet. Russia is still, in some ways, dealing with the tremors of the collapse of the Soviet Union because, like you rightly said, there was a dark period. On a map, the size of Russia does not fully capture how continentally enormous it is. It's a continent, it's not a country. It's huge, it's enormous. And for that country to sort of collect itself after the collapse of the Union, the Soviet Union, to chart a new course in every possible way, culturally, politically, diplomatically, come out of isolation, has been a process forged in the hottest of fires. It's created a new Russia altogether. So there is no question that Russia has gone through a very dark period, but consciously the people of Russia, the governments of Russia, the leaders of Russia, and especially someone like a Vladimir Putin have decided that a country on the front foot is what Russia is going to be about. That's why Russia gets along so well with China. Now, India, circling back to the India question, because this is actually one of those the finest quandaries. Most people are wondering how has India landed in this position where let's forget about Modi. Let's not make this about Modi. Let's just talk about India, because in my view, diplomacy has seen a great deal of continuity as far as India is concerned. Whether it is under the Manmohan Singh
You don't
government,
think from fence-sitters we have become...
Actually, no, because I'll tell you why. Let's just forget about China for a moment. Let's talk about India, Russia, and the United States. There was a steady improvement in the India-US relationship in the 90s, post-liberalization, because once Manmohan Singh liberalized the economy, it basically meant that India was becoming a slightly more capitalist society from a pseudo-socialist or a wannabe socialist nation. But then 1998 happened. 1998, India detonated its nuclear weapons, conducted its nuclear tests, and sanctions were imposed on India. It had widespread economic and military ramifications. But post-Kargil, and Kargil was another kind of turning point in terms of the geopolitics of how India was seen. The sudden takeoff of India-US relations post-Kargil, most visible in military contracts, military trade, has been meteoric, and we're seeing it meteoric continuing even now. It's one of the reasons why the most sensitive equipment continues to be supplied to India. Fun nugget that most people don't even know, and Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, former defense minister, said this at PLF, where she said that we've got record defense exports. Did you know that the US is India's largest defense customer? So
the reverse is always touted.
So everybody talks about how the US has become one of India's largest suppliers. Russia is still number one, but US is not very far behind. But the US is India's largest buyer of defense exports. So this relationship is, the connective tissue of the relationship is there. The nuclear suppliers agreement, the 123 agreement, trade, there's a drone deal that's going to be signed very soon. These are drones that haven't been supplied to any other country. Forget about, not even to NATO countries. So these are very, very important ways to look at this. Look at the relationship between India and the United States, the fastest growing relationship in the world right now. And yet you've got India and Russia, whose relationship hasn't slowed down in lieu of this one at all. Are there concerns and turbulences? Is there a tug of war? Of course there is, because Putin doesn't want that relationship to blossom and flourish. The United States is hoping that the pressures of this friendship will wean India away from Russia. Of course, I'm simplifying it, but these are the pulleys that we're seeing in motion, right? And in the middle of all of this, India quite effortlessly and quite ably, and I'm not diminishing the work of our diplomats, and they deserve our diplomats behind the scenes, the ones you don't see, the Jaishankar teams who are working invisibly, and previous external affairs ministers do an incredible job. They do one of the most difficult things on earth, which is, hammer out deals, iron out concerns, address concerns on a literally 24-hour basis between countries that can destroy the earth. And they do it in such a way that India stands tall. India bows to nobody as far as any of these things are concerned. I mean, you'll have the odd, the kind of woke ecosystem which will jeer or mock at the fact that Biden met with some Khalistanis before Modi came in. Modi and Biden are about to sign a drone deal worth $3.1 billion for equipment that the United States has staked its entire defense industrial complex on. No, but meeting Khalistanis is like, dekho, what an insult to Modi. This is what he really thinks of you. He's jibing you, he's elbowing you, he's winking at you. I mean,
So
all those things can be part of the masala of diplomacy, and mind games, mind you, are very much part of diplomacy. I'm not saying ignore messages like this. There are barbs, and these things should be taken seriously. But I find it a little absurd that most people are so disinclined to zoom out and look at the big picture of where India stands vis-a-vis these two countries.
So,
it's incredible, it's unique, it's unprecedented, it's unparalleled. No country on earth enjoys the kind of access and channels and respect that India enjoys with these two quote-unquote superpowers.
So how do you view the opinion that when the Bangladesh government was overthrown, that it was a signal to India that America is not very happy with the way you've not aligned with them with regard to Ukraine?
Look,
was there a pressure, or this is just our conjecture from us?
So I'll tell you what I think. Let's peel this layer by layer. First of all, what happened in Bangladesh? India was caught off guard. It was a multi-dimensional and multi-level intelligence, diplomatic intelligence failure as far as India was concerned, and the fruits of that will be seen in the days going forward. I'm talking about zooming out and looking at this. Anybody who tries to soften the blow of the reality of what happened is an idiot. The fact is, India didn't see it coming, and it was a diplomatic and intelligence failure for India. Now coming into all the other smoke and mirrors and the deep state and stuff, every time someone talks about the deep state, oh, the deep state's trying to destabilize India, oh, the deep state's now going to get into this. My question is, post 1965, when has the deep state not tried to destabilize India? Has there, when you say the deep state is now trying to get into things and destabilize India, which means you're implying that the deep state hasn't done it so far.
Maybe it's in the context of the fact that in 1965 we were poor, we were hungry.
The deep state, and let us, for the benefit of whoever is going to watch this video, let us define what deep state means. Deep state is basically a cocktail of large funding organizations, the CIA, the US government, ultra high net worth individuals who are plugged into the American system, who all have an alignment of alignment of impulses, alignment of desires, alignment of ambitions and destinations that have far-reaching consequences on governments, people, countries, nations, etc. Right? That's basically what the deep state is. It works in an insidious, behind-the-scenes manner in order to affect things like government change, regime change, opening markets, creating new markets, abrupt policy shifts in order to enable certain things like trade, etc., military and security shifts. That's what the deep state basically does. So my question is, again, at the risk of repeating myself, since 1965, because 1965 was also a bit of a turning point for India, because it was a war in which India first went up against US military equipment wielded by Pakistan. It was the first time that India had a deep reminder that the equipment it was using did not match up with US equipment in 65. Now, the deep state has functioned relentlessly since then, because the deep state also means that these are a bunch of aligned interests that have incredible and unmatched foresight about the world, and they've had the vision to see that this India, this country of snake charmers, is going to go far. So we need to put in place certain pressure points and systems that can contain it when we need to contain it.
Yeah. So, but then this is the problem I have, and this is something that even the media always talks about, and we always know that Pakistan is on the brink of collapse. It's on the brink of bankruptcy. But we all know that this very deep state and this relationship that you talk about so well, that has developed this robust relationship, this growing relationship between India and the US. Ultimately, what is bleeding us, this whole 1,000 cuts thing? It is Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. Now, India is going to constantly fight this war, and it will always enjoy the support of America. So maybe I'm naive. Isn't there not? So where is the policy here? Like, you are going to have a relationship with us where it is trade, but then you don't want India to be dominant in the Indian Ocean, so you will have Pakistan bleed us. Like, what is America trying to do?
Look, people outside the system tend to be unrealistic and a little, utopian about this whole India-Pakistan-US dynamic. People on the inside are infected by the realism of it. India has for years not attempted to ask the United States, why do you help Pakistan so much? India has not asked the United States that. There may have been a point of time, maybe sometime in the 90s, that India diplomatically wanted to know why the hell the US was helping Pakistan. But India understands that relationship. India understands US compulsions. India understands why the United States needs to keep that pipeline going with Pakistan. India completely understands that. We can go into the dynamics of why. Containment of India for one, part of the deep state. Two, because of China's control over Pakistan is there to see, and if the US lets go, it basically gives China a field run to
Afghanistan
enter and do what
Russia.
they want. Then there is AFPAC, there is Afghanistan, then there is the gateway into Central Europe. There are all these geopolitical dynamics which, in my view, more than justify US involvement in Pakistan. They more than it. We can get misty-eyed and saying, oh, they're giving them F-16s and also selling us stuff. Diplomacy doesn't work like that, and it may sound arrogant to say it's complicated. It's more complicated than that, but it is. It's not so simple. There are many countries that India will have a relationship with that our friends won't be happy about. So the web of these friendships is always going to be complicated. The beauty of how India has handled that, and I'll come to, since you're talking about the 1,000 cuts, the beauty of Indian diplomacy is we very quickly learned that we've got to adjust around that reality of the US never unplugging from Pakistan. We've adjusted around it. We've got a blossoming relationship with the United States. We're getting exactly what we want from them. We're selling them all of our defense exports. We've got a fabulous relationship going on with them, which at some level is at the detriment of Pakistan. Now, Pakistan, it's on the brink of collapse. It's been on the brink of collapse for a long time. So anyone who now talks about brink of collapse, I'm like, wake me up when it collapses, right? It's been collapsing for so long, the collapse actually doesn't happen. So Pakistan has been through hell and back many times. So let's not overstate what collapse means in their case. But the 1,000 cuts point is also a bit of an exaggeration now. Not only post abrogation of Article 370, and there are quantifiable data points showing the reduction in violence across criteria, whether it is infiltrations, whether it is attacks, whether it is grenades.
Despite what's been happening in Jammu. Okay, we'll listen to that in your session next week.
I'll tell you about, I'll touch upon Jammu as well. The point is, Jammu is proof that Article 370 has worked. Okay. Jammu is proof that Article 370, the manner in which terrorism has been brought down in the Kashmir Valley, South Kashmir, North Kashmir, those areas, has meant that there is an enormous amount of pressure in Pakistan to say, because their terror machinery and their terror industry complex is basically saying, what the hell? What's going on? We need to be able to spill some blood. You have to spill blood somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that India, was prepared for Jammu. We were not. We were a very unfortunate combination of situations meant that India wasn't able to deal with Jammu properly and has had to react. Because a lot of manpower was removed from Jammu to deploy them at the line of actual control for the military standoff with China. Much of it was rotated into the Kashmir Valley because of additional security requirements there post the abrogation of Article 370, which meant a kind of diminished presence in Jammu. The terrorists know it. Believe me when I say this, and I've gotten in trouble for saying this before, but terrorist groups have far better human intelligence on the ground than the Indian Army. There's no question about it. There is no argument on that. So, but I'm saying the Jammu situation is not going to be a long-term one. I don't see it as a long-term one because this is an area that the Indian Army dominates and has dominated. This is a small question of some logistical presence, some logistical lapses that have happened. That's kicking into gear now, and that will be sorted out. But in terms of the 1,000 cuts, it's gone down. The 1,000 cuts have gone down to 250 cuts.
Okay. So my last question to you is, of course, the alarmists will tell you that a Russia-Ukraine conflagration, the possibility of China going to Taiwan, and then of course, with Hamas, and October 7th is just around the corner. We've never been more unstable now. We're on the brink of another war. And now with Hezbollah and all the detonations that have happened, that it's going to be war. It's going to be war. Do you think it's going to be war?
Where? In India or where?
No, geopolitically, lots of nations been drawn in, something.
See, the beauty of the modern world is just how difficult it is for a multi-nation conflict to take place.
Yeah, actually that was my question, so glad you came to it.
The very fact that all countries are materially interlinked in so many ways, not just through the economy but in other ways as well, is a fabulous kind of safeguard against open conflict. Now, one would have thought that Israel's conducting some kind of an airstrike in Iran and killing the Hamas chief would result in an escalation, would result in a conventional reaction from Iran. It hasn't happened so far. It hasn't happened so far because in my view, I think unlike the 60s and 70s where the impulse was to escalate because countries were still finding their feet, the impulse now is to de-escalate.
Okay.
Even Israel, which has just had a very successful run with pagers and mobile phones blowing up, in the pockets of Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. Believe me, and I've been there and I've spoken to people, but this is my view. People may disagree, but Israel wants to de-escalate. They want a way out of this.
No, I've spoken to Israelis friends, and they're saying they're not fond of the war either. I mean,
The Israeli public has never been fond of the war. There's a large section that has not supported the war. That's always been the case. When I traveled there last year, there were huge crowds in the streets protesting against the war. There was huge public support for Netanyahu, but there were also very vocal expressions against the war. But having said that, all I'm saying is that war is not sustainable. A long war is not sustainable. There's a difference in what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, because there it's a brinkmanship issue. It's an issue that sort of goes beyond just geopolitics. You're also seeing some very difficult human angles in what's playing out over there. And that makes it much more difficult and much more uneasy. But in Israel, all sides are looking for a way out. They're looking for their exit ramp. It just needs to be something that makes everyone look reasonable and not more humbled than they already are.
Okay,
that's what it's going to be. So I don't see a major world war. China invading Taiwan continues to be a chimera in my view, because as I've spoken to military experts, I've seen a lot of explainers on this, and if you actually zoom in, and this is actually fascinating, more people should talk about this, an invasion of Taiwan would be one of the most difficult military operations for China, because what most people don't know is that the side of Taiwan is a tiny island, some kilometers off the coast of China. The side of Taiwan that faces China is almost entirely cliffs.
Okay.
And So which means that China can't attack the island straight. It would need to circle around and attack. And all those cliffs have air defense radars and air defense weaponry, all from the United States, state of the art. With a hawk's eye, with their beams just looking at China at all times, which means that Taiwan would have incredible early warning of any Chinese move that comes towards them. And the very fact that China would need to go all the way around to mount an attack on the beaches of Taiwan, would mean unacceptably heavy losses for China. So do they have the stomach for that kind of thing? Probably not. Which is why the cost of war is the most amazing deterrent. So I don't see a world war happening. That's the good news.
Thank you very much, Shiv.
Thank you.
I may have asked you questions from a very layman perspective, but then these are the questions that we
they're hardly layman. Believe me, these are questions that are asked in newsrooms as well. So there's no such thing as layman in this.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.